Lee Majors was never one to lay bare his emotions. Known as the $6 Million Man, rugged, indestructible, iconic, he built a career on mystery. But now, at 85, he has shared a truth no one expected, and it redefines everything we thought we knew. For decades, fans believed they understood his story. They thought the woman who captured his heart was the same one who captivated the world. Her face plastered across dorm room walls, her name linked to his in every headline. They were Hollywood royalty in the 1970s, the golden couple that turned heads and sold magazines. But here's the truth, that story was never complete. In a rare, candid moment, Lee opened up, not about the woman we all assumed, but about someone else entirely, someone who stood quietly in the wings of his extraordinary life. Someone the cameras missed, and someone who, for a fleeting time, gave him something stardom never could. As fans scrambled to reconcile this revelation, what emerged was a tale deeper than any headline, a story of pride, pain, second chances missed, and the one woman he let get away. Who was she, and why did he remain silent for so long? Lee Majors' confession is far more layered and more haunting than anyone imagined. Before he was television's indestructible action hero, Lee Majors was a Kentucky-born kid named Harvey Lee Yeary with a fractured start and no clear path. His father died in a work accident before Lee was born, his mother killed by a car when he was a baby. He never had a chance to know them. Raised by distant relatives in Michigan, Lee grew up with a gnawing sense of not belonging. He learned early that emotions were dangerous, vulnerability was weakness. It was a lesson he never unlearned. Sports became his salvation, football his purpose. He earned scholarships, transferred to Eastern Kentucky, and was on track to go pro. Then, disaster. An injury left him paralyzed temporarily and shattered his dreams. So what does a man do when the only thing that gave him identity vanishes? Lee started over. He worked for Los Angeles Park and Rec, doing manual labor. It was honest, thankless work. Then a friend nudged him to try acting. It sounded like a joke, but he gave it a shot. And Hollywood noticed. Behind the stoic face and quiet confidence was a man forged by trauma. Lee Majors had been orphaned before he ever learned the meaning of love. He was passed around by relatives, never allowed to take root, never taught to trust. He learned to survive, to harden, to become invulnerable. And when he walked into Hollywood, those traits, pain-born and real, became his brand. At acting school under Estelle Harmon, he honed his craft. His breakout came in The Big Valley, where he played Barbara Stanwyck's son. Audiences loved the look, the intensity. But behind the curtain, Lee still carried the silence of a wounded child. He didn't chase fame to be admired, he chased it because he had never truly been seen. And as he rose higher, the emptiness kept pace. By the 1970s, Lee Majors was more than an actor. He was a phenomenon. The $6 Million Man made him a cultural icon, but with stardom came scrutiny, and the media soon turned its attention to his love life. Enter Farrah Fawcett. Here was luminous, fresh-faced, free-spirited, and utterly magnetic. When she and Lee began dating in 1969, it was headline gold. He was the all-American hero, she the rising star. Together they looked like fantasy incarnate. The world was enthralled. Red carpets, glossy spreads, breathless coverage. They were the face of a glamorous, unattainable Hollywood. But it was a facade. Privately, Lee was intensely guarded. As Farrah's fame skyrocketed, especially after Charlie's Angels, he struggled. The attention, the constant presence of other men, the imbalance, it shook him. He had always been the protector, the anchor, but now he was losing control, not just of the narrative, but of her. Their time together diminished. Rumors of jealousy, distance, and arguments surfaced. Lee never spoke publicly. He wore silence like armor. But the tension was real. To the world, they remained perfect. But behind closed doors, Lee was already watching their foundation crumble. And while everyone focused on the iconic beauty beside him, Lee Majors wrestled with a sinking truth. He was losing her. And maybe deep down, he had never fully had her. The unraveling was slow, but in 1979 it snapped. After over a decade together and 6 years married, Farrah Fawcett left Lee Majors. It wasn't just personal, it was public, and it was brutal. The real sting? she left him for someone else. Actor Ryan O'Neal, once a friend, was now by Farrah's side. She moved out, was soon photographed with Ryan, and the tabloids feasted. Lee had spent years trying to keep their marriage afloat. Now it was over, and the world watched every moment. He said nothing, never lashed out, never gave the public the drama it craved. But friends say he was gutted. He withdrew, skipped events, turned down work. Everyone assumed it was heartbreak, that Farrah had broken him. But that was only part of the truth. What he mourned wasn't just her. It was what he had lost along the way. Vulnerability, connection, a chance to be seen. Because while the world believed Farrah was his one great love, Lee knew better. She wasn't. And losing her forced him to confront the woman he had once known, someone outside the spotlight, who had made him feel something real, and whom he had walked away from. While gossip raged about Farrah and Ryan, Lee Majors vanished. No interviews, no premieres, no high-profile comebacks. And during that silence, he met someone very different. She wasn't famous, she wasn't chasing it, and she didn't care that he was. Her name never made headlines. Most people never knew she existed. That, perhaps, is why she mattered. It happened during a quiet chapter of his life. He had stepped away from the spotlight, healing in private. She was thoughtful, kind, and uninterested in pretense. For the first time in years, Lee was simply seen. Friends noticed the change. He laughed more, softened. She brought out the version of him fame had buried, but it wasn't built to last. Lee, still battered by the Farrah fallout, couldn't fully let go. Vulnerability still felt like danger, so he pulled back. Fewer calls, canceled plans. Slowly, quietly, she disappeared. There were no tabloid headlines, no scandals, just a fleeting love story tucked away. But she had touched something no one else ever had, and decades later, long after the cameras faded, Lee admitted he never forgot her. For most of his life, Lee Majors embodied the unbreakable man. But behind the roles and the fame was a core of fear of intimacy, of loss, of being known. That woman, the quiet one, offered him something different. Not worship, not expectation, just space to be real. But Lee couldn't accept it. He had been abandoned too early, too often. Love to him was always temporary, always dangerous. So when he felt it, raw and genuine, he did what he'd always done. He stepped back. No fights, no scandal, just absence. Missed dinners, silence. And by the time he realized what he had done, she was gone. He told a friend years later, "She didn't want me to be anyone else, and I didn't know how to be myself." He would marry again. Some unions lasted, others didn't, but none, according to those close to him, ever reached the part of him she had touched, because she hadn't just loved him, she had freed him. Even after she was gone, Lee Majors never fully admitted what he had lost. Not publicly, not privately. Life continued. He took roles, smiled at galas, played the part, but something inside had shifted. That woman had woken something in him, a yearning for authenticity, for stillness. And once he knew what that felt like, he couldn't unknow it. He dated, he married, but something was always missing. Partners described him as generous, charming, but distant, a part of him unreachable, because he was still stuck in that old loop, replaying a past he couldn't change, wondering what might have happened if he had just shown up, said the words, broken the pattern, but he didn't. And so the silence grew, his career endured. The fall guy gave him another hit, but the spotlight couldn't soothe the ache. He grew older, watched friends disappear, eras end, and still, no one knew. Because the woman who changed for decades, Lee Majors kept his silence. He gave interviews, smiled for cameras, reminisced about the old days. But the truth? He kept that buried. Until now. At 85, during a career retrospective, Lee was asked one question. Any regrets? He paused, then said softly, "I let the love of my life walk away." The interviewer, surprised, asked, "Farrah?" Lee shook his head. "No, someone else." No one knew her. She saw through everything. He looked away, his voice quiet. "I thought I was ready, but I was still pretending to be invincible. You can't love like that." That was all. No name, no drama, but it was enough. The world lit up with speculation. Who was she? An actress? A lost love? No one knew, and that was the point. Lee Majors had spent a lifetime playing men who kept secrets, but this was real. In the end, Lee Majors became something rare, a legend whose most powerful story happened off-screen. As tributes poured in, fans celebrated his characters, but those close to him knew the truth. He had loved deeply, but privately. Even into his final years, he protected her. No name, no photos, just memory. And maybe that was what made it sacred, because the love that defines us doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly and never leaves. Friends said Lee would get distant when love came up, reflective, reverent. One recalled asking about regrets. "I had one chance to be known," Lee said, "and I let it go." Behind the icon was a man who had loved once, wholly, and never stopped remembering. Not even at 85. And now finally the world knows.